Hello everyone, welcome welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah if you're new here. And in today's video, I'm going to be doing my April reading wrap up. April was unfortunately a rather middling month. Not many fantastic books. A couple books I didn't really like, and a lot were just like right in the middle. Neither good nor bad, just a book I read, which is sad for me. But we're gonna break this down by genre, and I really quickly want to mention my vlog I posted where I did have a 5-star read in April, and you can click on that if you want to see what that was, but this is everything else I read in April. We're gonna start with sci-fi. Unfortunately, this literary sci-fi did not work for me. That is The Memory Police. And this is a translated work of literary science fiction by a Japanese author. And I really didn't like this. This is about an isolated island where things are chosen to be eradicated and forgotten, and the people of this island do not have a choice. Like somehow like they can go into your brain and like remove that thing. Birds have been disappeared, etc., etc. And so this is a big metaphor, obviously, and I really didn't like it. I thought the writing was very dry and very straightforward and almost like succinct, but not in a punchy way, in a kind of dry and direct way. And I don't know if this type of story worked with the type of writing, and I don't know if that's like a translation issue or a me issue, but I really didn't like this. This also had one of my biggest pet peeves, which was a very large cheating plotline that I absolutely hated, so I basically couldn't sympathize with the main characters. So this one didn't work for me. I am actually giving it a 1.5 out of 5 stars. I really didn't like this. I should have DNF'd this, but it was such a quick read that I decided to finish it. The Martian Contingency was a 3-star read for me by Mary Robinette Kowal. This is the much awaited 4th book in the Lady Astronaut series. I really loved books 1 through 3. The 1st, 2nd, and 4th book follow Elma York in an alternate timeline where a meteor has struck essentially Washington, D.C. and changed the global climate to the point where we have to escape the planet. And in the 4th book, we are following Elma on Mars. And this was a 3-star read. And to me, I don't think this author tackled the topics that she chose, the themes that she chose, very deeply. There is an offhanded like racism plot line that is really just hinted at. Not that we need to see that violence necessarily, but I don't think the way that it was talked about was very deep. It was just like, yeah, racism bad. And then there was the majority of this book was about pregnancy and pregnancy loss and abortion and a woman's right to choose. And I just didn't want to read about that particular theme, so I don't think there was anything wrong with this book necessarily. It was just about a plot line that I don't care to delve too deeply into, because like, while I agree with the author, it's not like fun for me to consume these types of stories. So I'm a little disappointed in this. I pre-ordered this, and I still love books 1 through 3 of this series, but unfortunately this one just didn't quite land 3 stars. And then we have a 3.5 out of 5-star read, which is Empire of Silence by Christopher Rucchio. This is an 800-page sci-fi novel, and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. This reads a lot like a high fantasy set in a sci-fi setting, which someone was reading Dune when they wrote their book, Christopher. There were a lot of similarities between Dune and this book in terms of like inspiration. It's definitely not like copy paste or anything like that. This is a very different story, but we're basically following the son of a noble, and he goes on adventures, and this truly feels like a prequel. The whole book, obviously the whole book is leading up to the ending, but it truly felt like this story was just getting started with the ending that happens in this book. And it didn't need to be 800 pages of episodic moments of this character struggling and growing and learning things and having little misadventures and adventures. It was too long. It was too long, and it was a prequel for the rest of the story. There are like 7 books in this series, plus a bunch of novellas and short stories, and I'm tempted to try the second book in the series just to see the actual story. But I don't know. I'm on the fence about continuing or not with this one. This character is a Gary Stu, essentially, or the male version of a Mary Sue. I don't even know what that is. Gary Stu, whatever. But you get what I mean. He's like good at everything without even trying, and he was not the most sympathetic character. I enjoyed all of the side characters more than I enjoyed our main character, Hadrian. So that's why I'm like, on the fence about this series. Let's talk fantasy. First, we have Long Live Evil by Sarah Rees Brennan. This is I believe my first book by this author, and this is I'm going to call this a satire, a romantasy satire. This book is about Ray, who is dying of cancer, and so trigger warning for that, and she gets this proposition to basically go into her favorite book series to find a magical flower that will like heal her in the real world. And so it's kind of a portal fantasy in that way, and this is kind of goofy. The tone of this is very silly and irreverent, and there's a lot of elements of satire, and there are moments of like romantic tension that happen in this book, which were kind of fun. Honestly, this book was kind of fun, but my big issue with it was we weren't just following Ray. We got basically every single side character's point of view at some point throughout the story. There are like a cast of 4 or 5 characters that we get additional POVs from that I didn't super care about. It was interesting, I guess, to see this story from all these different angles, but that is not my preferred method of consuming a story. I would have much preferred if we'd stayed with Ray the whole time and really kind of dug into her feelings about being disabled, dying of cancer, and like this opportunity and what it means to her. And she portals into an able body, a healthy able body, and so there are some moments of her kind of thinking about that and disparaging how her cancer-ridden body and her chemo torn body doesn't look like this and blah blah blah. But I don't know if it went deep enough for me to feel fully satisfied for this character, but this was kind of fun. I gave this like a 3.5 stars. It was kind of a good time. I kind of want to see what happens. It did not need as many POVs though. So that's kind of my overarching thoughts. Then we have the first book, which is From This to This, of the Deed of Paxnarian. The first book is The Sheep Farmer's Daughter by Elizabeth Moon. I want to give the biggest of trigger warnings. The opening of this book is our main character Pax running away from her home. She's supposed to get married and she wants to be a warrior. So she runs and joins a mercenary band, and she starts training to be a warrior and a soldier in this mercenary band. And she is very violently assaulted. She is not sexually assaulted, but only because the perpetrators were interrupted. So they beat her almost to death. And the good 10% of the book is focused on the trial for this assault and digging into the details and talking to every single witness to figure out the truth of what really happened, and the trial that happens for the perpetrators, where they detail everything that happens to this character and her body while she's like dissociating. So that was really hard. That was really challenging to read, especially at the start of the novel. That's like 10% into the book is when the assault happens. So after that, there's no sexual violence. There is other types of violence, as you know, a mercenary band at war with other mercenary bands, you might imagine, but I just wanted to say that up front. With that said, once we got past that attack, I did have a good time reading this. This ended up being a 3.75, almost a 4-star read for me. I enjoyed the adventure that Pax went on. She definitely is giving asexual vibes. She talks about not wanting to participate in any form of that. And this is about her making friends, losing friends, going to war, fighting, and something kind of interesting is going on with her, that she maybe has some sort of magical abilities, or she might be like talking to a god, or a god might have chosen her, but we don't really know at the end of this book. There's just kind of like hints of that. So I'm assuming in other books in the series we will delve more into the magical aspects. This is a fantasy and there is magic, but it's very like off to the side. Our character, for the most part that we know of, is not a magic user. Magic is very like on the periphery of this story. I had a good time with it. I'm going to continue the series. I'm glad I read it. I enjoy Elizabeth Moon's writing and her character work. The only reason I'm giving this the rating that I am is, one, the attack, the assault, which just we spent way too long detailing that. And two, I don't love war when it's like strategy talk and like the movement of troops and that type of focus. Like, the battles are kind of fun, but the strategy and the moving of troops and that kind of thing is not my favorite plot. And that was essentially what this was. So I overall enjoyed like the broad strokes of this story, but the minutia and the little details, I was like, I don't really care about the strategy behind all of this. But again, I'm going to continue. I had a good enough time with it. We got 2 Abby Jimenez to talk about. We're in the romance category now. First, let's talk the Happy Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez. I gave this 3.5 stars. This is about Sloane, who is an artist, rescuing a dog who happens to belong to this guy named Jason, who is an up-and-coming musician. And he's gonna be very popular. He's gonna be a big star. And so they talk about the dog at first, and of course that brings them together. And I thought this one was all right. There were moments of this where the story and the romance was very, very sweet and cute. But there were also some things about this that I didn't love. The famous person, normal person dynamic, I don't know, was executed super well, in my opinion. They like sort of tackled it, but I don't really love the resolution of how that dynamic and how it was gonna work between them. How that like pans out isn't my favorite. Sloane is dealing with some grief. She lost a fiance a couple years before the story. I thought that one was well done. That exploration of grief. But yeah, I didn't love this one as much as I was hoping to. This was cute, but it didn't wow me, unfortunately. The other Happy Jimenez we have to talk about is her latest release, which is Sail You'll Remember Me. And I also gave this 3.5 stars. This is about Samantha and Xavier, and Xavier is a vet and he has his own practice in Minnesota, and Samantha finds a kitten with no butthole, and so she brings the cat to Xavier to help. And that kind of kicks off this whole story. The biggest thing about this book is this is about taking care of your aging parents with dementia. Samantha's mother is suffering from dementia, and they have decided to keep her home, and they live in California. So Samantha is moving to California to care for her mother, while Xavier lives in Minnesota with his veterinary practice. So that's kind of like the big conflict. This is so much about caretaking, and really diving deep into what it looks like to caretake for someone with dementia. And I know Abby Jimenez doesn't shy away from like really hard hitting things. She toes the line between kind of lit fic and romance, but to me this one tipped too far onto the lit fic side of things. The romance I just didn't think was developed that much, because these characters are obsessed with each other pretty much right away, and they love each other very deeply very quickly, and the only thing keeping them separated is the distance. And for a romance, what I like is the angst and tension, the will they, won't they, but when the characters are already like really in it and gung-ho about the relationship, there's no romantic tension to me. The only tension comes from these outside factors, so I don't think the romance in here was as interesting as some of the other Abby Jimenez romances. You know, even if like one character is obsessed and the other one has hesitation, like that's where the tension can come in. But to me, there was no romantic tension between these two. They already wanted to be together. It was just the distance that was the problem. Xavier has his own stuff. His parents were physically, emotionally abusive to him. And that does come up a couple times where he's referencing his parents and what they did to him. So again, like trigger warnings for Abby Jimenez books. But this one for me fell flat with the romantic aspect, which is what I was hoping for. You know, you want a good romance when you read a romance novel. This one just leaned too far towards the literary side of it and the themes. I did cry a little bit because of the dementia stuff, you know, with family experience, personal experience with family members, hit really hard. So be careful with yourself with this one. I am yapping. I do not need to be spending this long on each book. Last romance is Earl Crush by Alexander Vashti. This one was really cute and really fun. I gave this like a 4.25. This is about Lydia, who is essentially catfished. She has been corresponding with the Earl of Strathfenwick, which is a Scottish lord, for 3 years. And so she shows up at his house and is like, hey, will you marry me for convenience, because I have a lot of money but I need, you know, a husband to do things in this society. And he's like, who are you? And so we find out that the actual Earl of Strathfenwick, his name is Arthur. His brother was using his name to correspond with Lydia, and they are trying to track down the brother. There is like a pretty heavy plot line that has to do with like espionage and like politics of this time period, which I thought was super fun and interesting, and like actually made this romance fairly high stakes. And this is a romance between Lydia and Arthur, and this was so fun. This was a lot of fun. This was very cute. It was pretty steamy, to be honest. Great romance, great pacing. This was very fast paced for a romance. I liked pretty much everything about this. The reason it's not like a new favorite, absolute favorite, I don't know if I could put it into words, but I hate to do this. But it didn't scratch that itch. It was another one of those instances where like there is angst and tension in the romantic pairing, which I enjoyed, but there's just something missing. There's a secret ingredient that wasn't quite there. But I did really enjoy this one and gave it, you know, a high 4.25. So I would highly recommend it if you're looking for a good time. Okay, let's really quickly speed run the nonfiction because, you know, who cares about my nonfiction reading? I mean, I do, but I thought it was a good idea to try again with these shipwreck stories, and I was proved that I just don't like these types of stories. So I read Endurance, which is Shackleton's Incredible Voyage by Alfred Lansing. This is the story of a shipwreck and in Antarctica and how this crew survived. And in the early 1916, 1917, thereabouts. And I just wasn't as interested in this topic as I thought I was. I read The Wager, which is a very similar vibe, another shipwreck story, and was bored to tears. And like sometimes history is boring, but it's like you'd think a shipwreck type story and a story of survival would intrigue me, and there were moments that this was intriguing, but there were so many repetitive moments because like you're just trying to survive and there's only so much you can do, so you have to do the same thing every single day to survive, and that's boring as a reader. So yeah, I gave this 3.5 stars. I don't think there's anything wrong with this book. I actually think this book is really well executed, very well written. You get lots of excerpts from the journal entries of this crew, but I just didn't love the subject matter. I just thought it was kind of boring and I should stop reading shipwreck stories, I guess. Last but not least, my other 5-star of the month was actually a nonfiction, Everything is Tuberculosis, The History of Persistence of Our Deadliest Infection by John Green. This is fabulous. Period. It's a short read. It's like less than 300 pages. It is about the systemic issues surrounding this particular infection and why, yes, it's an infection, but it's more about the system around the global economy and the global health of poor countries, as to why this infection is lingering, even though we've had the drugs to combat it and eradicate it in certain wealthy countries for 70 years. This was fabulous. This was very personal and raw in a lot of ways. John Green did so well weaving through a narrative as well as information throughout this work. I really think he did a great job with this nonfiction, and I highly recommend it. It was so powerful and moving, and we can all be part of the solution to fix some of our health systems, our global health systems, in my opinion. And this just kind of confirmed what I already knew in a lot of ways, but gave me a bunch of new information as well. Those were all of the books I read. Here were some of the physical reads I had for the month of April. Mostly kind of a middling month with a few gems in there and a few series I will be continuing and authors to check out. What was your favorite read of April? I would love to know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video of mine very soon. Bye!